Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam's 7th canto, chapter 1. The Supreme Lord is equal to everyone. Text number 17 today. There's no board, so I'm just going to read. Etat vitum ikshama sarva evam vayam mune Bhagavan nindayami lo dvijais tamasi patitaha. O great sages, we are all eager to know the cause for this mercy of the Lord. I've heard that formerly a king named Vena blasphemed the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that all the Brahmanas consequently obliged him to go to hell. Shishupal should also have been doomed to hell. How then did he merge into the Lord's existence? Dharma gosha sutta papa arabhya kalabhashana sambra charmarshi govinde dantavakra stiturmatihi. From the very beginning of his childhood, when he could not even speak properly, Shishupal, the most sinful son of Dharmaghosh, began blaspheming the Lord, and he continued to be envious of Sri Krishna until death. Similarly, his brother Dantavakra continued the same habits. Text 19. Sabato asakritvisham yad brahma param avayam svitro nadyato divayam nandam vivisatustamaha. Although these two men, Shishupal and Dantavakra, repeatedly blasphemed the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, Krishna, the Supreme Brahman, they were quite healthy. Indeed, their tongues were not attacked by white leprosy, nor did they enter the darkest region of hellish life. We are certainly most surprised by this. Purport. Krishna is described by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita 10:12 as follows. Param Brahma Param Dharma Pavitram Paramang Bhavan. You are the Supreme Brahman, the Supreme Abode and Purifier. Herein this is confirmed. Vishnu Yat Brahma Param Avayam. The Supreme Vishnu is Krishna. Krishna is the cause of Vishnu, not vice versa. Similarly, Brahman is not the cause of Krishna. Krishna is the cause of Brahman. Therefore, Krishna is the Para-Brahman, Yat Brahma Param Avyayam. I'll take the last verse again. Shabato asakrit Vishnu Yat Brahma Param Avyayam Svitro Nadyata Divayam Nandam Vivisatustamaha. Although these two men, Shishupal and Dantavakra, repeatedly blasphemed the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, Krishna, the Supreme Brahman, they were quite healthy. Indeed, their tongues were not attacked by white leprosy, nor did they enter the darkest region of hellish life. We are certainly most surprised by this. Om Madhyana Smrnadasyakinandana Salakya Chaksuhilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukkam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langaite Grim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Sri Gurum Dinatarinam Namo Vishnu Vadaya Krishna Kristaya Bhutale Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Namni Namaste Saraswati Devam Gaura Prachayani Vishesha Shunyavadi Dasvajani Sajani Vanja Kalpatulubhyascha Vivasalubyascha Patitam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Jai. So here Yudhishthira Maharaj continues asking about this highly mysterious event that happened at the Rajasuya sacrifice. Shishupal merged with the body of Krishna, which normally is only for the most pure, elevated souls. Of course, merging with Krishna's body is, Moses is not really for the elevated souls. Pure devotees do not merge with the body. But still, this is a destiny generally attained by great mystics, great who are Brahman realized souls, and certainly not by someone who's just envious and blasphemous like Shishupal. How could that be? Brahman in the purport he talks a little about that Krishna, he is the supreme pure, he is Pavitram Paramam, and because of contact with the supreme pure, even the most envious person also becomes pure simply by associating with Krishna, which is kind of the point here with Shishupal. In the verse 17, the first verse, we read about the Yudhishthira Maharaj. He compares this situation to the instance of King Vena, who was also a greatly blasphemous and envious king. He's described in the fourth canto. He was the father, somewhat the father of Maharaj Prithu. King Vena was also a great atheist and who completely discarded all the Vedic principles and tried to establish himself as the supreme ruler. The point is, the king is not the supreme ruler. He is the supreme ruler, but he's always working under the Brahmanas. But this King Vena, he wanted to push the Brahmanas aside and establish himself as the supreme lord, because that's really what it's about. That demons, atheists, like us, here, we want to be God. We want to be the supreme. We don't want to have anyone on our equals. We don't have anyone on top of us. And of course, that's always been, we always seen the opposite. And this is why, in one sense, we can get a little in touch with reality, because we've been beaten in material nature, because we're not very powerful, really. So we're constantly being beaten and battered in this material world. And thus we can stay a little humble and understand actually we are small and we are not the supreme. But this Vena, he was a quite powerful personality, and he was able to somewhat establish himself for a while as the sovereign ruler, or as a dictator or tyrant. He wasn't a real king as such. He was not really a Rajashi, a saintly king. He was mainly like someone like. Do you remember Idi Amin or something like that? Do you remember him?
Who was the one who was eating his?
I don't know. He was complete man.
He was a cannibal. He was serving for the French. I think he was serving some French people.
Real monster. In Uganda, was in the 70s like that. He became a dictator, and he was just. Anyway, that's of course typical Kali Yuga, but Vena was something like that. So, anyway, it's the whole story is, or the whole history is narrated in the fourth canto of him, and finally the Brahmins just had fed up with him, and they simply cursed him and killed him and got rid of him. Brahmins in those days had that power. Simply by their mantra, they could kill someone. So don't get too close to Brahmins. They didn't do that. Normally they had the power, but they didn't really use it, because Brahmins are not generally not meant to involve themselves in politics. They stay outside of politics. It's not their field, it's not their service, it drags them down, and it becomes a disturbance to the social order. If the Brahmins start getting involved in politics, the system is that the politicians, meaning the kings, they go to the Brahmanas and they always worship the Brahmanas. That's actually the real qualification of a proper king, is that he's always worshipping the Brahmanas. Therefore, a king, the first thing in the morning when he gets up, then he worships the brahmanas or pays obeisances to the brahmanas and so on. So because he's always subordinate to the brahmanas, and that was the Vena's fault. He tried to put himself above the brahmanas, but kings are supposed to be under the brahmanas, and they go to the brahmanas and they take advice from them and get their blessings, and then with their good intelligence, after having been advised properly by the brahmanas, they make the decisions. And then they take the full responsibility for their decisions. That's actually the system. It's the brahmanas do not make the decisions; they advise, and the king then has to take that advice, and then he has to take the decision and take the responsibility. If it's a great success, then the king, he gets the praise, and if it's a failure, he gets the blame. Brahmanas don't get any case. Of course, if brahmanas give bad advice, the king may not ask them for advice. These brahmanas next time, he might take another brahmana. But brahmanas actually don't. They're not involved, and therefore they're not being. They are neither. If for example the brahmana advises the king and gives him very good advice, and the king goes out and becomes successful, conquerors, or he's able to rule very well, then all the credit goes to the king, not to the brahmana. Of course, the king will privately go and he'll be highly grateful, very appreciative of the brahmanas, say thank you very much. But like in the public, the brahmanas are not praised as such. They're simply in the background. The king gets all the praise, because actually he's the one who actually took the decision and executed it. And simply, if everything fails, also the brahmanas are not being blamed. It's the king who's being blamed. So that's a system, and brahmanas are staying out of politics. They don't get involved in all this execution. They have a different lifestyle. Brahmanas are engaged in performing austerities and in very simple lives, and they cultivate knowledge, they study, they teach, they engage in deity worship, they teach others to perform deity worship and yajnas and so on. That is their life, and they don't get involved in administration and politics besides advising the kings. They come there. So that is a system. But in the case of Maharaj Vena, he got so much out of control and was such a disturbance, and was so destructive for the society. So the brahmanas had to go and simply kill him off by mantras, and that was highly unusual. There are only a few instances like that. So he was a very, very blasphemous king, this Vena. And so how was it that Sisupal, here, usually he gives him this is the standard example, and many other examples would have been given, and they all go to hell, these kings. They become born in lower species. I think this Maharaj Vena was describing his next life. He was living like some villager suffering from maybe leprosy or some terrible disease, or something like that. That is the destiny of those who are blasphemous and atheistic. And so what about Sisupal? Why didn't he get, So, and we'll hear the difference was that he was so absorbed in Krishna that he became purified. Vena was not absorbed in Krishna. He was just an atheist and blasphemer. So, that was the whole difference. And of course, from here, the main instruction is not that. To understand that Sisupal was an extreme exception. The general thing is like Vena. When one becomes atheistic and blasphemous, this is what happens. Therefore, it is constantly being emphasized. It is one should not involve himself in, of course, blaspheming the Supreme Lord. Even worse than blaspheming the Supreme Lord is to blaspheme Krishna's devotees. To That is what is the main thing that can destroy one's spiritual life. We have been given this unique gift of devotional service. It's something that has to always be repeated. It's something we are extremely fortunate to be given the seat of devotional service by the grace of the devotees, by the grace of Sri Prabhupada. We've gotten this exceptional, this unique chance to engage in devotional service to Krishna. It is, the fortune that accrues to someone with that particular chance cannot be, it's simply beyond description. It is, there's no one who's fortunate like that. And that should always be remembered, that we have, it's not a cheap thing, it's the most valuable thing, and one should protect it like anything, one's devotional service, one's connection with Krishna. And in order to do that, one has to be, it's a little of a, in one sense it's a science, or one has to always be vigilant, on guard, probably practicing.
Vigilant, hvad betyder det?
On guard. Overvågen. One has to, just like when you're driving. Driving in one sense is a simple thing, but it takes the constant vigilance of the driver. He doesn't even have to exert so much energy, but he has to be always there and keep the car on the right track. If he deviates just a little, he can drive off the road. Of course, if he's always vigilant and just carefully and attentive like that, then driving is not dangerous. But if one becomes inattentive or careless, or and then it comes at one kind of actually it can even become like a pride, and like I'm a very good driver and like that. And suddenly attention just plays in some other direction, and then you lose control of the car. And simply, driving in devotional service, one has just to be constantly on the guard, just that one is on the track. It is a track. It's like driving on roads. You have to stay on the track. As long as you stay on the track and follow all the traffic rules and so on, then you're fine. But leaving the track, that's problematic. So in devotional life, one has to be sure that one is always on the track, and that is discussed in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, also later devotion by Rupa Goswami. Therefore, one has to, one has to constantly be on guard in one's cultivation of one's spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya compares the cultivation of devotional service to the cultivation of the plants. One gets the seed of devotional service by the grace of the devotees, by the grace of the spiritual master. One gets the seed of devotional service, and then one seeds it in one's heart, and it starts to grow. And then one has to cultivate it very, very carefully. One has to nurture it like plants. They need to be nurtured. They have to have some good soil. There has to be fertilizer, and there has to be water, and there has to be light. In this way, the plant has to be properly nourished. That's one thing. And this nourishment of the kriva of devotions, of the plant of devotional service, is described as actually hearing is the main thing. Like plants need water. So we're watering our devotional plant by hearing. Hearing means we're hearing from the devotees, we're hearing lectures, we're listening very carefully, and we're reading. It's actually, reading. It's Prabhupada gave his books. They were meant to be read. Prabhupada wanted his books to and all devotees should read his books. because that's actually the main thing that really waters our devotional creeper. So that's that's one thing. Nourishment has to be given to the devotional creeper, and that's every day. We cannot say, I watered the plants yesterday. This plant needs water every day. Of course, plants can sometimes go for some days without water, but they don't grow properly. And if you don't give them water for some weeks or some months, then the plant simply dies. So similarly with our plant also, it needs this constant watering in form of proper hearing and proper reading. And if we stop doing it, think that I did read so much and I've already, I've heard so much already like that. Now I do not need to hear anymore. I do not need to read anymore. Then, gradually the plant will die and will wither away. So it will dry out, and it will happen for anyone if we stop the proper hearing and reading. So that's one thing. Nourishment has to be there, but then there are also other things one has to be on guard on. There are weeds. In a garden has weeds, so it's not only that one should water the plants, the plant of devotional service, the creeper of devotional service. One must also remove all the weeds that are there. These weeds, if they're not removed, then they grow along with the creeper devotional service, and they also become big and strong, and they choke the creeper of devotional service, which can be a quite delicate plant. You have all other plants which are much more strong, like thistles and thorn trees, and like that. They can, if you water them, they can become very big plants, and the more delicate plant of devotional service will completely be choked up. So one has to be sure that one removes all the weeds, and these weeds, they are compared to many things actually. They compared to the anarthas, the unwanted things in the heart. These can be desires for enjoyment, different kinds of gross enjoyment, simply sense gratification, or they can be a little more subtle enjoyment, desires for fame, profit, distinction, popularity, worship. I want to be a big devotee, I want to be a famous devotee, I want to be a guru, I want to lord it over devotees, or something like that. There are weeds like that. They can also, and the danger with some of these weeds, like for example, of course, the weeds of I want to go to Christianity and smoke hashish. That's a weed, definitely. But in one sense, it's easy to distinguish that this has nothing to do with the creep of devotional service, and it's easy to see, so pull it out. But there are other weeds which are looking very much like the plant of devotional service. If you're not a very expert gardener, that's one of the arts of doing proper gardening. You have to, especially at the small stage when you're weeding. If you want to know a little about gardening and how to keep weeds under control, you have to remove them at the earliest stage as possible, because then they're very easy. A small creep, a weed that is just a small sprouting plant, you can just almost push it, and it it's very, very easy to remove. But if they're there and they become strong and get strong roots, they're so much more difficult to pull up. So one thing about weeding is that actually you have to be out very early, and you have to know the difference between the desired plants and weeds. at the first stage when they just had 2 leaves. But that takes quite some expertise because they can look quite similar. In the beginning there. But if you're an expert, you can see the difference. But if you're not really expert, then it's very hard to tell the difference sometimes. So that's a problem with some of the weeds. They can look very similar to the real plants, and thus one can end up cultivating a weed. It's actually weed. One thinks it's a devotional creeper, but actually it is a weed. And therefore, of course, one needs guidance. Sometimes someone has, we need this is, how does one protect himself against that? We get protected by taking shelter of more experienced devotees who can point to us and say, get rid of that weed. You say, but that's my devotional creeper. And then they say, no, it's a weed. It's not a real plant. Pull it out. This is how we protect. We get rid of those weeds. Take the association of devotees is always so important. Association of devotees. Otherwise, we'll not be able to distinguish between the real weeds and the false weeds. But that's a real danger that we can, be cultivating. Very often it comes up something like desire for, distinction and worship and like that. And someone who's, when one has that desire, one will act like a very sincere devotee, because in the association of devotees, the only way you can get respect is actually being in devotional service. So that desire for worship might even result in that one has actually followed the process very nicely, but the motive is wrong. And then it can come out at one point, is actually, even one's practice of devotional service and chanting, all the water is sucked up by this weed, and at one point it comes out and really chokes one's real devotional service, and some disaster can happen. That is seen many times in the history of Vaishnavism, like that. Someone on the path of devotional service, once on the pure level, that doesn't happen. Still, when we are on the aspiring level and the practicing level, this can happen, and that has been happened many times in the history of Vaishnavism. So one has to be very careful of that. That always one's motive is really only one to come to the point of pure devotional service, rendered for the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. That's only that. So one has to remove the weeds properly by cultivating, by carefully observing what is in one's heart, and make sure that one's motive is always pure and nothing else. And then also there are, another thing is that there are dangerous animals attacking one's garden. It's described. That's as far as I know, even the word garden somehow or other is connected with an area that is fenced in
Skal bare lige tømme mit ansigt for snart. Jeg kommer ikke gennem sådan noget.
The word garden, at least in some languages, it's connected with that one is building a fence around a certain area to keep animals out. Because if animals enter, wild animals in the gardens, then they destroy the garden. And furthermore, it describes actually the worst animal. Of course, we don't have so many of those running around here, but the worst animal that can in the garden is an elephant. A wild elephant entering the garden, they are really dead. They can completely, they'll knock down anything. There's no wild elephant, bull,